This webinar is about revalidation myth busting. We know at the General Medical Council that there are some myths about revalidation. What we'd like to do in the next section is to discuss those myths and answer some of your difficult questions. I'm joined today by my colleague Ian McNeil, who is a Regional Liaison Advisor for North London, and I'm Kim Tolley, a Regional Liaison Advisor for South London. So what we're going to do for the next section is Ian and I will answer the questions, and then the other person will respond and talk about what the GMC answer to that question is. So the first myth, Ian. A recommendation for deferral is negative and always seen in that light.
I mean, this is a really important issue, Kim. It is known to us that some people are seeing it in negative light, but I'd like to make it clear that there is in no way, shape or form meant to be punitive. It's not a negative action against a doctor. It's not something that's publicly available to the members of the public through the GMC website. It does not change how a doctor's licensed to practice operates, and they can carry on working as normal. But it's really important to stress that a deferral can only be requested by the responsible officer.
Thank you, Ian. So another myth, which leads on very much from that previous question, is a myth that the doctor themselves can request a deferral by contacting the General Medical Council.
No, as I said earlier, it's really important to recognise that it's only the responsible officer that can ask the GMC to defer the revalidation date. Clearly, the doctor themselves might recognise that there's some issue which means that a deferral might want to happen. However, they need to talk that through with their appraiser and their RO at as early a stage as possible, so that the RO has got time to request that deferral from the GMC.
Thank you, Ian. That's really helpful. Another myth that we're actually seeing is that doctors sometimes feel that it would be really difficult to restore their licence if they've relinquished their licence, if they're working overseas, and they want to restore their licence when they return to the UK.
Yes, I know this is a frequent question that I know you and I get asked as we talk about revalidation across London, but it's not a difficult thing to do at all. Clearly, doctors might want to relinquish their licence for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes is when they go to work abroad and that they're not actually going to need that licence. It's a really, really easy thing to do. If you relinquish your licence, you can apply to restore it at any time. You'll need to make an application no more than 3 months before you want to come back. Among other things, we might ask for proof of identity, a copy of your current passport. We may also ask for you to attend an identity check at our offices. We might want to see certificates of good standing from other medical regulators if you've been registered with them. So if you're working abroad and you register with a foreign medical regulator, we'd clearly want to see some indication from them that you're still in good standing. And of course, we might want to see some statements from your recent employers about your employment and work with them. We aim to contact you within 5 days of getting your application to let you know if there's any other information that we need. In some cases, we'll assess your application and give you a decision within 5 days of receiving that extra information. If you have given up both your registration and your licence to practice, however, you will need to restore both, and that might take a little longer. Okay, so let me ask you a question for a change then, Kim. So I know another myth is I need to retain my licence to practice even when I go overseas.
So this is very much linked to your previous answer, which is really helpful. And you did mention in the previous answer that doctors who work wholly outside the UK don't in fact need their licence to practice. So your licence to practice actually gives you the legal rights and privileges in the UK, for example, things like writing prescriptions, that actually don't apply in any other country in the world. So that's why you don't need to maintain your licence to practice when you go overseas. You will need your licence to practice if you come back to practice in the UK, even if you just come back for a short period. And if you want to retain your licence to practice while overseas, you will need to participate in revalidation, and that's where it becomes quite complex. So the message really from the General Medical Council is that if you're working overseas, it would be more sensible to relinquish your licence to practice, and then when you come back, as Ian said earlier, it's quite a simple procedure to get back onto the register.
Okay, linked to responsible officer, I know there's another term known as a suitable person. As I understand it, the GMC will find me a suitable person.
Okay, that's a really good question. A small minority of doctors will not have a prescribed connection to a designated body due to the nature of their practice and where they work. Only UK organisations can be designated bodies because the legal rules that determine this only cover the UK. So if you've used our online tool and it appears that you don't have a connection to a designated body, there are sort of certain steps that you need to take. Firstly, you need to log on to GMC Online through our website. If you don't already have an account, you can set up a new GMC Online account. You click onto the My Revalidation tab and then click onto the I don't have a designated body button. At this point, you'll be asked to provide some information about what you do and where you work. This will help the GMC to provide you with more advice. The GMC is working with 4 countries of the UK to identify a suitable process for the revalidation of doctors with no prescribed connection, and we're publishing details as we go along as this changes. In the meantime, the most important thing is you should consider your professional duties as set out in good medical practice, including keeping your knowledge and skills up to date. You should also review our supporting information and guidance talked about in our previous webinar and consider the information that you can collect to show that you're keeping up to date and fit to practice. You should also really consider whether you need to hold a licence to practice. We've already talked a little bit about this. Holding a full registration with a licence to practice allows you to exercise certain privileges in the UK. Again, we've already talked about some of these, writing prescriptions, but also things like signing death certificates. If you don't require a licence to practice, you may choose to continue to hold registration with the GMC, but without a licence to practice. I think in summary, really, only the General Medical Council can appoint a suitable person for you.
Okay, thank you. That was a very comprehensive answer. In another myth that I've heard, I understand that anyone can be my suitable person.
Another good question. Your suitable person actually needs to have a causal link between you in terms of both practice or speciality, and they need to be able to provide evidence as part of an application process. So no, you can't nominate your own suitable person, and not anybody can be your suitable person. That suitable person has to have appropriate policies in place to manage any concerns or conditions about your practice and undergo quite an extensive application process and approval at the discretion of the registrar at the General Medical Council. There is some guidance on revalidation and the criteria for recognition as a suitable person on our website, and we'll make sure that we put the links at the end of the presentation for that. Okay, and perhaps I could ask you a question. One of the things we often hear out in practice when we do sessions is that doctors think that they need 250 credits of continuing professional development per year to revalidate. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, this one's quite a simple one though, Kim, isn't it? The answer is the GMC doesn't require doctors to have any specific number of hours or credits of continuous professional development. It's not something that we set. However, we are aware and recognise that other organisations, such as the Royal Colleges, may set guidance on how much a doctor should be spending in terms of that CPD. And of course, other specialties that they may be working in may also determine that they need CPD. So the answer to that one's really easy. The GMC does not set a minimum number of credits for continuing professional development.
Thank you, that's really cleared that up, that's brilliant. Often we get asked by retired doctors about giving up their licence to practice and how that actually works and what the pros and cons of that are. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that, Ian.
Yes, again, yeah, it is a popular question in terms of some of the sessions that we run. If you have fully retired, you should consider really whether you need to keep your licence to practice. If you volunteer your services as a doctor, you should talk to your volunteering body about whether or not you require a licence for the activities you undertake for them. If you choose to retain your licence to practice, you will of course need to participate in revalidation. Your good standing with the GMC will be maintained by keeping your name on the register. You'll need to pay a reduced annual retention fee if you give up your licence, and you can restore your licence free of charge at any point in the future should you decide to return to practice, just as we explained in that earlier answer.
Okay, Ian, I just wanted to ask again really about revalidation if I don't have a responsible officer or suitable person. What's the process that the GMC are putting in place to actually help me in that situation?
Yeah, we are aware that there's a small minority of doctors that might be affected by this. All licensed doctors can participate in revalidation by sending us information each year about your work and evidence of your participation in your appraisal process. Taking part in an independent assessment of your medical knowledge and skills if we ask you to do so, and by paying us a fee to evaluate any evidence and for each part of the assessment. So there is a route open to you if you're not currently linked to a designated body, but clearly you might want to take some advice from our contact centre if you would like to get further information.
No, that's really helpful.
Okay, my turn to ask some more questions. As I understand it, if I volunteer as a doctor, I need to have a licence to practice.
The most important thing here really is to speak to your volunteering body. As you said earlier, it depends what you're actually doing when you're volunteering, and discuss whether you actually need a licence to practice. If you do, you could try to identify a suitable person who can make a recommendation about your fitness to practice. But we have recently published some information about volunteering, and again, we'll make sure that's referenced at the end of the presentation. So Ian, I just wondered about evaluation of revalidation, finding out whether it's working or not. What's the GMC going to do about that?
Well, the reality is this is a long-term piece of evaluation, and it's probably going to take over the next 3 years some time to actually fully assess the impact that revalidation is having. That evaluation process is starting in the summer of 2014. The evaluation is going to assess the fairness of the process across the range of practice environments and specialties that we know doctors work in. It'll look at the patient involvement in revalidation, and it will also consider GMC guidance, for example, including supporting information to the ROs and the Good Medical Practice Framework for appraisal. But of course, another key area for us to look at is how effective reflection is working. Well, I know you've probably found this session quite informing, and if you'd like any further support in relation to revalidation, our regional liaison service, for which both Kim and I work, is available to assist you across England if you have any questions about revalidation. We're also available to attend groups of doctors and to actually talk through some of the issues in more detail if that would be helpful. You can go onto our website, the GMC website, and look up the Regional Liaison Service. You'll see a map which will detail who your local Regional Liaison Advisor is, and by simply clicking on the links on that map, you'll be able to email one of us directly, and we'll be only too pleased to get back to you.
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate that, Ian, that we'd really be happy to come and talk to any groups of doctors about that. But in the meantime, if you have got concerns, our contact centre is really, really helpful, and it's a great source of information. It's open Monday to Friday 8 till 6 or Saturday 9 till 5. And the telephone number for that is 0161 923 6602. That's 0161 923 6602. But also, it might be helpful if you have got any specific queries that you want to clear up. If you want to email us at gmc@gmc-uk.org, and that's just useful because then you've got a written record of what you've actually discussed. Thank you very much from Ian and I from the Regional Liaison Service. We hope you've found this webinar useful. Thank you also to the BMA for hosting it for us.